In this module, we're going to learn how to use the time editor to very easily blend between different animations. All right, so we have a brand new scene open up here, and you can find this exact same scene within your project files. And if we play this animation in the scene, you can see we have a very basic idle animation for this UFO object. And currently it goes to frame 25, but we have 120 frames in our timeline. What we can do, just take a closer look at the idle in action. We'll just shrink this down to frame 25. And then play this. And then we'll get a sense, since that timeline is simply looping over, we get a good sense of sort of how this idle animation is currently looking. So just a very simple animation. And we can drag this back out to 120 there. And then we can go ahead and pause the animation and go back to frame 1. So the time editor in Maya is basically going to allow us to put all of our keyframe information for this object onto what is called an animation clip. And you can think of the time editor in a very similar way as something like a video editing software. So if you put all your animation data, keyframe animation data, onto a clip, it's going to allow you to very easily blend between multiple clips you may have for a single object or a single character. For example, you may have an idle animation for a character, you may have a walk cycle for a character. You can put the idle animation onto a single clip, an animation clip, and you can put the walk cycle onto an animation clip, and then use the time editor to basically blend between those two animations and create sort of a finished sequence. So let's go ahead and go over how we can begin to utilize the time editor. So we'll go ahead and select our control object here for our UFO, and then we'll go up here to Windows, Animation Editor, and let's choose the Time Editor. It's going to bring up the Time Editor window. Now one thing to keep in mind is that the Time Editor is very similar to Maya's Tracks Editor. It works in a very similar way. So if you've used the Tracks Editor before, then you're probably going to be quite familiar with the Time Editor. And this is sort of a revamped version of Maya's traditional tracks editor. But one thing to keep in mind though is that Maya hasn't completely phased this out, or Autodesk hasn't completely phased out the tracks editor just yet. If we go up here to Windows, Animation Editor, Tracks Editor, we can see it right here. So you still have that option to use the tracks editor, but the time editor is sort of like the new feature here in Maya 2017. So let's go ahead and we'll bring up this dialog box again. And right away we'll see that we have a couple different options here right when we open the time editor. So right here we have the import content from external files. So if we had an animation clip exported, we could actually bring it in here. We also have the option to add selected content from the scene. So we currently have our UFO selected. And what this is going to do is basically if we hit this, it's going to automatically just put our UFO animation onto a brand new animation clip for us. And then this last option is drag and drop files into the editor. So if you do have external exported type of animation clips, you could simply just drag and drop them directly in the time editor and it'll upload them for you. You want to go ahead and choose this middle option here. So we're basically going to select this, and Maya's automatically going to put all of that keyframe animation data for our UFO into what we see here on this animation clip. And we can see up here at the top we have the frame number. And if we move this off to the right a little bit, we can simply scrub this, and we have this yellow tag just like in the graph editor. So if we click and drag, we can see our animation is playing through, but it's actually playing off of this new animation clip that has been created for us. And again, this is very similar to something like video editing software. If we take a look up here at this Composition 1 dropdown, we have the option, if we want to rename the composition, as well as delete the composition. And over here, we also have the option to create a brand new composition. And you can think of these compositions as sort of an editing scene or a project for your time editor, just like you would find in a video editing software or something like After Effects. So a composition contain multiple animation clips inside them, and you can have multiple compositions, and each time you create a composition, it's going to have different animation clips in it. So each one is going to be sort of its own self-contained project. So by default, it's going to have us create, or it's going to create this composition one for us as soon as we add this animation clip and create this animation clip inside of here. So now that we have this animation clip, let's go ahead and take a look at some of the really cool things we can do with it and really alter the look of our animation really quickly. So you can see that this animation clip goes to frame 25, just like we had for our original keyframe animation data. But what we can do is very easily retime this animation. So let's go ahead and select the animation clip and highlight it. We're going to go up here and select this icon right here, and this is going to go into scale mode. So when we do that, if we hover our mouse sort of at the end of this animation clip, let's go ahead and do that and then select and then click and drag to the right. And what we're basically doing now is we're stretching this animation clip and retiming it. So now if we drag it to maybe around frame 60, our animation is now going, instead of its original animation of 25 frames, it's now going all the way up to frame 60. And if we play this, you can see that we've completely retimed the entire animation in just a few seconds and completely altered the speed of this idle. In just the same way, we can drag it the opposite direction and make it go much faster. So you can see you have a lot of freedom in being able to shift your animation clips around and retime them if you want to. Let's go ahead and drag this back out to frame 25 here. We can go ahead and pause the animation. Go back to its original position of frame 25 and we can go ahead and play it there. Now we also have the option up here to loop the animation. So if we select this and do it just like we did before, go ahead and go to the end of the clip here and then select it and drag to the right. And what this is going to do is just create a continuous loop as long as we stretch this out. So we can create a loop maybe to frame 100, and then if we play this, you can see we've simply just looped that animation clip, and now you can see we're getting some really nice results here. Alright, awesome. So you can really get a good sense of where you can utilize these animation clips for being able to sort of very quickly retime an animation if you need to. So now that we've learned sort of the basics about these animation clips, what we're going to go ahead and do in the next clip is we're going to dive deeper into the time editor and learn how we can both import and export our animation clips, as well as learn how we can actually blend between different animation clips to create a finished sequence. So we're going to learn about that in the next clips.